HoKua, and good morning. This is the June 10th, 2021 Land Use Commission meeting, which is being held, of course, as you can tell, if you're here, via Zoom. Linking video conference participants and other interested individuals of the public in order to comply with state and county official operational directives during the still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public are able to view the meeting via the Zoom webinar platform. For all meeting participants, I'd like to stress the importance of speaking slowly, clearly, and directly into your microphone. It is helpful if you identify yourself prior to speaking. Also, please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Your continued participation is your implied consent to be part of the official record of this meeting. If you do not so consent, you should be leaving this meeting now. This technology allows all of the meeting participants and each individual commissioner access to the meeting via our own individual personal digital devices. Because of that, due to matters entirely outside of our control, from time to time, occasional disruptions to connectivity may occur. If this happens, please be patient. Please let us know, as we will try to restore audiovisual signals so that we can conduct our business during the pandemic. For any members of the public who wish to testify during our meeting, during any matter to which public testimony will be accepted, you can indicate your desire to be raised to a participant in the meeting and testify rather than simply being attendee by using the raise your hand function if you are accessing the meeting via the Zoom webinar software, either on your laptop, desktop, or smartphone, or if you're calling in by telephone by pressing *9. I'll repeat these instructions as well as my indication that I will try to take a break approximately 10 minutes every hour. My name is Jonathan Likeke Shoyer, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving along with my 7 co-volunteers as the chair of the Land Use Commission. Along with me, Commissioner Edmund Axon, Don Chang, Gary Okuda, Arnold Wong, our executive officer, Daniel Oradenker, our chief planner, Scott Derrickson, our program specialist, Natasha Quinones, our chief clerk, Riley Hakoda, our deputy attorney general, and our court reporter, Gene McManus are all on the island of Oahu. Commissioner Lee Ohigashi is on the island of Maui, Commissioner Dan Giovanni is on the island of Kauai, and Commissioner Nancy Cabral is on Hawaii Island. We currently have 8 seated commissioners of a possible 9. I'm going to briefly describe some of the schedule hiccups we have for today. Commissioner Dan Giovanni, I believe, needs to be absent between 9:30 and 10:15 a.m. Is that correct? You're muted, Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair. I have adjusted my schedule. I'm fully available today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Commissioner Lee Ohigashi needs to leave the meeting at about 1:30, as does Commissioner Axon, and Commissioner Wong can only stay till 3 p.m. Our matters yesterday took much longer than was initially anticipated. Our hope is that we can get through all of our business by 1:30 p.m. At least that's my individual hope. With that said, our next agenda item is docket number SP21411, AES West Solar LLC, to consider a special use permit application 2020 SUP6 AE West Solar Oahu Solar LLC for construction and operation of a 12.5 megawatt solar photovoltaic and 50 megawatt hour battery energy storage system on land owned by the University of Hawaii, TMK 19-2-002 lot 007. And to consider the proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order related to CUP 2006-0001. Will the parties, beginning with the applicant, please identify yourselves for the record?
Morning, Chair, members of the Commission, Curtis Tabata for AES, the petitioner.
And are any of your clients with you, Mr. Tabata?
Yes. Also present is Nick Molinari, the project manager.
Okay. Thank you very much. City and County of Honolulu.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, Commissioners. Dwayne Pang, Deputy Corporation Counsel on behalf of the Department of Planning and Permitting. Also with me is Dina Wong, planner representing Department of Planning and Permitting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pang. May I assume that on the Zoom window that the second entrance of Dwayne Pang is actually Dina Wong?
No, I think I just was mistaken. That's probably me making a very big mistake.
No. There's two. So the staff can check and rename. There's two entries for you. Thank you very much. Office of Planning, Ms. Kato.
Good morning, Chair. Deputy Attorney General Allison Kato for the Office of Planning. Also here are Rodney Punakoshi and in the attendees, Lorraine Maki from the Office of Planning.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now let me next update the record. On March 3rd, 2021, we received public testimony from Senator Kurt Favela. On April 27th, the commission received special use permit application for AES West Oahu Solar. On May 5th, the commission received the Planning Commission's Index of Records containing exhibits 17A through 17H. On May 13th, the commission received the applicant's proposed findings of fact, conclusions in law, and decision in order, Exhibit A, as well as a certificate of service and an amended certificate of service. On June 4th, the commission mailed the meeting agenda for today's meeting to the parties in this docket to our statewide and county mailing lists. On June 7th, the commission received the Office of Planning's comments on the special use permit application. Also on that day, the commission received additional public testimony. On June 8th, the commission received email from the applicant stating that AES had no objections to the Office of Planning's proposed conditions stated in the June 7th letter. Now for the parties and the public, let me describe our procedures for today. First, I will acknowledge all written testimony received to this point on this matter. After the completion of noting that, I will offer the opportunity for individuals of the public to offer oral testimony on this matter. I will do so by asking them to raise their hands using the raise your hand function in the attendee room. I will then enter you into the meeting room one by one, offer you 3 minutes to provide testimony. Following your being sworn in, following your testimony, you will be available for questions by the parties and the commissioners. After the completion of all public testimony, I will call for the applicant to make their presentation and commissioners to ask questions of the applicant. I will then provide an opportunity for the county and the Office of Planning to offer comments on this docket. Following that, the commission will ask any final questions, and then the commission will move into deliberation. As I stated before, from time to time, approximately 10 minutes every hour, we will take breaks. Are there any questions with our procedures for today, starting with Mr. Tabata?
No questions.
Mr. Pang.
This is Dwayne Pang. No questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Kato?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. I'm now going to note the written testimony that we've received. As I previously stated, on March 22nd, we received testimony in opposition from Senator Kurt Favela. On June 7th, we received testimony from the Hawaii Operating Engineers Industry Stabilization Fund. On the 7th, also from Pacific Resources Partnership, from Scott Enright, and from Rebecca Dehuff Matsushima on behalf of Hawaiian Electric Company Incorporated. And this morning, we received testimony from Damien Kim of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I'm now going to call on any individuals who wish to provide public testimony on this docket. I'm going to first let in Pane Meatoga III, followed by Michael Pacheco. Again, if you wish to testify in this, you should use the raise your hand function, or if you happen to be calling in by phone, *9. When you come into the meeting room, please, you will now be able to enable your audio and video. So please do so. And then I will swear you in, ask you to state your name, address, and any affiliation for the record, and have 3 minutes to testify. Mr. Meatoga, would you please enable your audio and video? Aloha, good morning.
All right, good morning, aloha chairs and commissioners.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. So state your name, address, and affiliation for the record, and please proceed.
Hi, Panamia Tonga III. Address is 2181 Lawili Willie Street, Kapolei, Hawaii, 96707. I represent the Operating Engineers Industry Stabilization Fund. That is a labor management fund comprised of our 3,000 Local 3 union members and our 600 signatory contractors. So I just wanted to submit, you have my written, but also to give some oral testimony in regards to supporting of this project. As you know, in my oral testimony, and I'll just quickly summarize really quick, in regards to the state's, renewable energy goals. And I've worked on many projects. My area that I live in is out in the North Shore in HoKua. So obviously I am very well aware of what goes on there with the wind turbines and such. And that was a very controversial project. But when I see projects like this that make sense and combine both agricultural and the renewable energy goals that we have for the state, to me, that's a big no-brainer. It makes more sense here on this side with PV as opposed to wind. So I am really happy to see a project that makes sense and that works for everyone in the community. Obviously, there's an economic aspect to it in regards to job creation, as well as having more workforce shift over to a renewable energy type of job. As you know, we still have high unemployment. In my former life, I worked as a tourism executive, so a lot of my friends are still out of work. And so having an opportunity for people from the tourism sector to pivot into other sectors, I think is a great thing. Obviously, diversification of the economy and getting more industries, especially growth industries, makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, in summary, I just wanted to submit my oral testimony in support of this project. Thank you.
Mahalo nui. Are there questions for the witness from the petitioner?
No questions.
County,
No questions from the county. Thank you.
Office of Planning,
No questions, thank you.
commissioners. Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony, both written and oral. We very much appreciate it. Mahalo nui. I'm going to make you an attendee again and then let in our next testifier. Who is Michael Pacheco. Again, when you're admitted to become a panelist, please enable your audio and video. Aloha.
Aloha.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. So if you'd state your name and address and affiliation for the record and then proceed.
Of course. Good morning. My name is Michael Pacheco. My address is 1552 Allencaster Street, zip code 96816. I live in the Kaimuki area. I am giving testimony on behalf of IBEW 1186, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Our membership comprises about 3,500 members, ranging from electrical construction, telecommunications, spectrum, AT&T civil service workers, motor and marine, and of recent, even Kamehameha school teachers or the private school teachers as well. I thank you for giving me the time to testify. And if I may, just to start off, this is my first opportunity in a LUC meeting. And if I may give you thanks for your diligence yesterday as I sat through, I saw the hard work that everybody puts in. So thank you, Chair Scheuer, Vice Chair Axon, and the rest of the commissioners. And once again, we're in strong support, and in the respect of your time, I just want to be nice and brief and to the point. Here at the IBEW, on behalf of Damian Kim, our eyes and our perspective in targeting the big thing is our state's goal of being 100% renewable by 2045. And projects like this move us forward, helping us better serve our community and our members. I just want to bring up three solid points. First off, to kind of reiterate Brother Pane's sentiments. We definitely at this point of the game with the pandemic, we need to be really smart about what projects we choose to push forward. And in this sense, I definitely think that this is one of those. And the reasons are this, one, their track record. You can see that with AES, their track record is solid, and that's definitely something else. But more importantly, I think and my third and final point is the relationship that we've built with them. We've had those eye-to-eye kind of conversations about making sure that not only is this project done at the hands of capable people, but more importantly, it being safe. We can go on about some of the other points, but for us here at IBEW, we really feel that these are some of the three highlight points of why we're in strong support of this special use permit. So with that being said, I thank you for your time and leave it in your capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pacheco. We appreciate it. Questions for the witness?
No questions.
No questions from the county.
Questions? Thank you.
Commissioner Okuda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pacheco, just a real fast question. You talked about the track record of AES, and also it seems like the relationship between the union and AES. Can you comment a little bit about that? Because in my view, sometimes relationships are important too. So can you comment about the track record and the relationship between the union and the company? Briefly anyway. Thank you.
And not a problem at all. And thank you for the question. I've been lucky enough where Damon Kim, our business manager and secretary, has spearheaded these conversations. I definitely know if he was here, he could probably give a little bit stronger point of view. I was more of in the background listening as we went to it. And just to be able to have that open door back and forth where and much to the point of even their redesign and making sure that we have more agricultural opportunities there as well, is some of the topics that kind of came up as we dealt with them. Unfortunately for me personally, this is our first, for my boss, because he has more experience. He has more I guess granular details about exact projects, this and that. But I was there to witness that back and forth banter. And to me, that is super important because, a lot of people can say one thing and then down the road, things change. And so far from what we've seen, it's always been, that straight line. So I hope that answers your question, Commissioner.
It does. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear cooperative nature, because we all in Hawaii have to work together no matter what sectors we come from, because I guess as the old saying says, we're all in the same boat or the same canoe trying to paddle in the same direction. So thank you very much for taking time and your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions, commissioners? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Pacheco, for your testimony. I'm going to move you to be an attendee again, and I'm going to call on Nathaniel Kinney, followed by Christopher Delaney, Cam Black, and Jan Gouveia in that order. Aloha, good morning, Mr. Kinney.
Good morning.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Okay.
I am here representing the Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters, and we wanted to support the applicant in their project. We believe the project will help Hawaii meet its 100% renewable goal by 2045. It reduces the need for fossil fuels. The project would produce jobs and economic activity in a time when we need it most. The project also, to us, meaningfully incorporates agriculture through honey and beef production, and provides badly needed revenue to the state and the University of Hawaii, specifically right now with these budget shortfalls, especially with the university. And we believe that the LUC should move swiftly to approve this project. I believe there's the coal-fired electrical plant that's going to be ending in 2022. So I believe solar energy is a much better fit for Hawaii, and getting this online as quick as possible so that we can shut down the fossil fuel site would be best. And to the to the point of one of the other commissioners' questions, we do believe AES is a reputable company. They've shown a desire to pay living wages. I mean, in this move from fossil fuel to clean energy, I think it's important that we support developers who come in and want to pay a meaningful living wage to workers in Hawaii. And there's no reason why we can't kill two birds with one stone, transition to green energy while paying a living wage to our local workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. Can you also thank you for stating your name and affiliation. Can you state your address for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1311 Hoff-Tailing Street, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96817.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the witness?
No questions. Thank you.
No questions from the city. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioners? Commissioner Axon?
Okay, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure, is it time
You can
for-
disclose if you would like to.
Yes, thank you. I just wanna, for the abundance of, I just wanna disclose that I have prior working relationship with Nathaniel Kinney on his prior positions. I didn't know that he's working for a regional council of carpenters. So having said that, my office, my capacity is trained carpenters apprenticeship, but my office and the regional council carpenters are two different entities which is independent from each other. And I can assure that, I'll be impartial on this. I don't have any financial obligation or from the carpenters. So I just want to kind of disclose that.
Okay, thank you very much for disclosing your relationship with a witness who stated their support for the project. Just in an abundance of caution, I will check to see if any of the parties have any objection to Commissioner Axon's continued participation in this docket.
No objections.
No objections from the city.
No objections. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thanks, Chair. Just a point of clarification. I want to make sure that the remarks by Mr. Kinney are not misinterpreted. He spoke to the transition in two-part from fossil fuel to renewable energy and also to a better wage structure. But Mr. Kinney, isn't it true that the loss of jobs from the AES coal plant, those were good paying jobs as well?
That's a really good point. In my previous capacity, actually, we had some issues with the coal-fired power plant. They did some refractory work and they brought in guys from the mainland to do it. And so I just can't, and I understand that it's a sister company of AES and that they're all under the same umbrella, but that just really rubbed me the wrong way when they brought in guys from the mainland to do, from I believe Texas, to do their maintenance on their refractory work, whereas the AES solar plant is going to be hiring guys locally from here to put up the panels, to clear the land, to tie into the grid. It's I guess I would have only have actually having dealings with AES, the coal-fired power plant, and then when we went down there to talk to them about using guys from the mainland, they were just kind of like, well, you guys don't have any specialty in this, and we're like, we do have. There are contractors that are specifically and local guys that are on the bench right now that need this work. So again, I just see that as in comparison to the solar power plant, which is like, hey, clean energy, and we're willing to take local guys and take them off the bench and put them to work. So that was just a personal experience of mine from a previous capacity. So, but I do think there are some jobs in there. But again, I think the state has made it clear that they want to transition away from this, fossil fuels and the need to change our ways, and trying to get to a better, greener production of power.
I'm not going to take issue with your personal perspective, but I do believe that the full-time employees of AES coal plant or IBW union workers and those jobs will be lost.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Are there further questions for the witness? I just observed, since we're trying to protect the environment, rather than killing two birds with one stone, we might be saving two birds with one action.
I stand in deference to the chair on that one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinney, for your testimony
you.
today. We appreciate it. I'm going to move you to be an attendee. I'm going to admit Cam Black. Again, please enable your audio and video. I will swear you in, then state your name, address, and affiliation for the record. And you'll have 3 minutes. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, everybody else out there. My name is Cameron Black, Renewable Energy Project Program Manager at the Hawaii State Energy Office. Our office address is 235 South Beretania Street in downtown Honolulu. And my apologies, but we did not submit written testimony to the LUC on this SUP, but I'll provide you my oral testimony within 3 minutes. In 2010, about 17% of Oahu's electricity came from renewable energy. In 2020, about 31% of Oahu's electricity came from renewable energy. And collectively, the state's electric utilities surpassed the state mandate of 30% renewable energy by 2020. However, we still have to replace over 60% of Oahu's fossil fueled electricity in the next 23 years for Oahu to reach 100% renewable energy by 2045. According to the US Department of Energy, in 2019, Hawaii's imported foreign crude oil came primarily from Libya and Russia, with other refined products including jet fuel, propane, low sulfur diesel fuel oil being imported primarily from Asia, the Caribbean, and South America. Hawaii's crude oil is offloaded via an offshore mooring point off Campbell Industrial Park, moved inland via an undersea pipeline, refined, and then redistributed via barge throughout the state with other refined petroleum products. As was mentioned earlier, Oahu's only coal plant, the 180 megawatt coal plant at Campbell Industrial Park, which provides between 12 to 16% of Oahu's electricity, but is the second highest stationary source of greenhouse gases behind the Kahe power plant, generating 19% of the GHG emitted by Hawaii's power plants and refinery. This coal plant is scheduled to be retired on September 1st, 2022, and is prohibited by state law from operating after December 2022. We believe the West Oahu Solar Project is a critical project for our energy transformation, given its role related to the ending the use of coal in Hawaii. Of the 9 new utility scale solar plus storage projects now being proposed on Oahu, the West Oahu Solar Project has the earliest guaranteed operations date of September 7th, 2022. Did I say that number right? I think I did. Which is a week after the scheduled retirement of the coal plant. We hope this project receives your approval, and we request that the LUC at least make a timely decision so that all involved can integrate your decision into how we as an island move forward on the coal plant and other projects involved. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black, for your testimony. Questions for the witness?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioners? Questions? If not, we very much appreciate your taking the time to give us oral testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I look forward to listening to the rest of it.
I'm going to move you to be an attendee. Admit Christopher Delaney. Again, if you can enable your audio and video upon being admitted to be a panelist. Good morning. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth? Okay, we can't hear you. try to say something? We're not getting audio. There might be a microphone issue. If you have a headset you can plug in, that might assist. If it's okay, Mr. Delaney, I'm going to move to Jan Govea while you try to work this out. Okay, I'm going to move you back to being an attendee for a brief period. I'm going to admit Jan Govea. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You know the drill.
All righty. Well, good morning, Chair Shar, Vice Chair Axon, Vice Chair Cabral, and members of the commission. I am Jan Govea, Vice President for Administration at the University of Hawaii. My address for the record is 2444 Dole Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96822. We are the landowner of the property at issue. We want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the application before you today. We thought we actually submitted written testimony on Monday, the 7th, but it appears that we were not successful in uploading our testimony, so I do apologize for that. In brief, I would like to share that the university is very excited about working with AES to develop solar PV and storage on our West Oahu property. This project hits a lot of our strategic goals and objectives, like our sustainability mandate to achieve net zero by 2035, by increasing the productivity of our underutilized land, as well as doing our part to help the state and the public decrease its reliance and demand for fossil fuels. We have been working with AES and HoKua for almost 5 years now on this particular development. And we are finally beginning to see light at the end of a very long tunnel. We are excited to have reached this particular milestone. And we want to thank you, the commission, for your hopefully favorable consideration of the application before you today. So with that, I'm available to address any questions or concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Govea. Are there questions for the witness?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioners. Commissioner Okuda, followed by Ohigashi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Govea. Since we normally don't have to disclose conflicts with witnesses, I'll just mention that I've worked with your father, Jerry Sakia, a very fine lawyer, on other matters. But I have a specific question about this project on West Oahu, or land which was designated part of University of Hawaii West Oahu. I know from my very good friend, Dr. Jan Javinar, who I think still might be the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, that West Oahu does a lot of outreach on the west side and tries to extend college education towards non-traditional students. Just from our own information, is West Oahu going to benefit financially in a special way from this project, or this just goes into the big, system pot where some people think money goes unfairly to the Manoa campus and not shared with the teaching institutions? I mean, do you have a comment or response to that?
It will absolutely, probably a large portion of it will go to the West Oahu campus. They will be the primary beneficiary of the proceeds. But internally, we are working out a formula. But yeah, the campus will be the primary beneficiary.
Yeah, and let me just say that I think the university does is a real gem resource, and people like Dr. Javinar should be especially recognized. I mean, it goes back to his roots as a Farrington High School graduate coming out of Walter Lane in Kalihi. He's never forgotten his roots, and whatever support the system can give to educators like him and campuses, I'm sure we'll all appreciate it. But thank you very much, Ms. Govea, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Ohigashi.
Concern was brought up at the last hearing, not on this matter, but the hearing that we just did, that the owner of the property is not a party to these proceedings, and therefore the conditions and the requirements may not apply to the owner of the property. So my question to you is, as the owner of the property, would the University of Hawaii agree at this point to be part of, or be subject to the conditions if this matter is passed?
Well, let me try to respond this way. We will absolutely do whatever the law requires us to do. And to the extent any orders have any responsibility on the University of Hawaii, we will absolutely do that. I will share with you that I think many of the conditions that are placed as part of your order are shared concerns by the university as well. We actually have, I think, very similar concerns about what happens with the land during the project and even after the project. So, you know, I don't think our interests are in conflict, and I think they are actually in more of an alignment in terms of how the land ultimately is treated, again, during and after the project.
I'm not sure that answered my question. However, I will take it as that is the limit of your authority. I'm going to say that because special use permits someday will end, and removal of the fixtures on the property, which in this case, it's not a hole in the ground, but it is above ground construction. We'll have some kind of, we'll need some kind of remedial action. And if we cannot hold the owner responsible for that kind of remedial action, my question is that how do we know that the developer was merely, I guess, has some kind of easement or lease on the property, would be able to fulfill the conditions 25 years hence? We know that the University of Hawaii should be here 25 years. That's all I have. That's a comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Commissioners, are there further questions for Ms. Govea? If I may, can you share what exercises or planning was done, if any, to look at the integration of this and the surrounding parcel, both during the period of the special permit and afterwards into the teaching and research mission of the University of Hawaii at West Oahu, UH West Oahu?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the topics that we have been in discussion with AES on is seeing where we can have overlapping programs with what they do and with any kind of either trade or engineering, scientific type of programs at West Oahu, or actually any of our campuses. We have not fleshed those out in a lot of detail, but it absolutely is a topic of conversation that we're going to probably start to hone in on as the project gets closer to development and operation.
Thank you. Commissioner Okuya, followed by Chang.
Ms. Govea, this is a follow-up question following up on what Commissioner Ohigashi raised. Along that line, what assurances would the Land Use Commission have that at the end of this project, if when decommissioning is required, that we're not going to end up with like a Mauna Kea situation where there's going to be things that should have been decommissioned and removed, and the things that should have been decommissioned and removed aren't removed, and now it becomes a community issue. What assurances would we have that, you know, at the end of this, even though most of us probably going to be dead, that we're not going to be again in a Mauna Kea situation? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, what happens at the end of the lease has been one of our biggest concerns. And when we were working with AES on our documents, and now you're going to test my memory, and I may have to ask somebody from the AES team to help me out here if I get it wrong. But I believe they will be setting up an escrow type account where there's enough funding in there to complete the demolition and restoration of the site back to basically original conditions. If in the event the AES or the developer does not meet their contractual obligation to do so. So number one, it is an obligation of the lease of our contractual documents with AES for them to demolish and remove and restore the site. But because of our same concern, we wanted to make sure that there was actually funding set up. So if I recall correctly, I believe we set up an escrow type of an account where money would be
Thank you.
placed in there.
Commissioner Okuda, follow up.
Yes, very, very briefly. Well, along the same lines of the concern that Commissioner Ohigashi was raising, do you think it's important for the community that, notwithstanding these types of lease arrangement, there's a specific commitment made by the University of Hawaii, which would be binding on the University of Hawaii, that if in fact the decommissioning actions do not take place as required by the lease or the contract, for whatever reasons, the University of Hawaii will do that? And I only raised that question because, there was a Mauna Kea issue that was brought before the Land Use Commission here. And it seemed like commitments from the university are very important to developing, maintaining, and extending trust towards the community. I mean, is it possible for the university to give a commitment that it itself will be committed to whatever decommissioning is required?
I will probably have to run this past the leadership team, to be very honest. I understand where the concern is. And I do think that we have set up a mechanism with the developer to make sure that particular concern is in fact funded and executed by the developer. And so I'll just have to look at that arrangement to see what kind of risk will be taken on by the university in the event the developer does not do their part. Because I think ultimately we will be expecting the developer to complete that responsibility.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Gover. You answered the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chang.
Good morning, Jan. Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm going to follow up on Commissioner Okuda's comment because I'll tell you, I've got a real, lack of better words, hard on for ensuring that developers are complying with their commitments. So I have been really pushing for like performance bonds. So I'm pleased to hear that you have an escrow account, but and you seem to be somewhat confident, but not sure. Is there any objection if we required as a condition a performance bond to ensure that there is adequate funds available by the AES to decommission and remove all of the equipment that they put on the site?
So I think what this has been a subject of a lot of discussion with the AES team. And in fairness to them, I really would like to see if they can have an opportunity to comment on the arrangement that they would feel the most comfortable with. We went back and forth on different scenarios, and we were trying to see what is the best way to have that financial guarantee without tying up cash, so to speak. I should also point out that decommissioning is required under state statute as part of any, I think, PV development. So I do want to defer to the AES team as the primary, and then the university can weigh in on, what it can do to augment or supplement that.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And I would definitely be asking the developer, because we've seen too often, I mean, there are windmills still standing in Kaua. So notwithstanding requirements to decommission or restore sites, especially on state land, that doesn't always occur. So I'll ask the developer as well. My final question is more like it's a community benefit. And this is sort of following up with Chair Schroyer's comments about, when we're using state land, there should be some community benefit. And I understand there's a financial, they'll be paying for use of the land. But even as an educational institution, the thought of having at least an internship or some kind of a educational opportunity that is set aside to a university student, to get experience here. This is an emerging industry, so I'm not too sure what kind of arrangements have been made, but I think that that's an important community benefit, especially given it's an educational institution. So again, I will leave that up to you, but that is, I think, something for consideration. All right.
Thank you.
No, mahalo.
Thank you. Anything further, commissioners? While I'm concerned about time, I'm going to use this opportunity, maybe 45 seconds. I'm grateful to the university. I owe my existence in Hawaii to the fact that my father became a professor in the territory in 1950 at Manoa. But I do feel the University of Hawaii across its system often uses and views lands as merely sites to place buildings on, rather than things integral to its academic mission and part of the core identity of the institution. And so I would look forward to the day when the university approaches the lands which it occupies with a perhaps more contemporary and culturally grounded sense about it. Thank you very much for your testimony today. I'm going to try and move you back to being an attendee. And Mr. Delaney has, I believe, called in by phone to address the audio issues. Oh, so okay, this is a first. I'm going to press allow to talk. You're not going to see him as a panelist, but I'm allowed to, for somebody calling in by phone, allow them to talk. Mr. Delaney, are you able to say something? You might need to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry for the delays.
No, this is again, this is Chris.
Yes, this is Christopher Delaney with Pacific Resource Partnership.
Okay.
And our address is 1100 Alakea Street, 4th floor, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. And I am the Government Relations Manager for Pacific Resource Partnership. And we would like to express our strong support of the AES West Oahu Solar Project. The AES West Oahu project provides a valuable opportunity to stimulate our economy, both by creating new jobs and by creating infrastructure which can help lower energy costs to consumers and businesses. Construction of this project will support approximately 118 jobs in the state of Hawaii and approximately 11.3 million in labor income, with total economic output of approximately 20.2 million. In addition, the project will generate and store electricity derived from solar resources, providing clean, renewable energy for Oahu. It will reduce the need for fossil fuel burning power plants in the region. When completed, this newly proposed solar project will be capable of generating enough energy to power approximately 4,600 homes, which will advance the state closer towards achieving its goal to generate 100% clean energy by 2045. I would also like to add that the project incorporates agriculture in a meaningful way by incorporating honey and beef production. So again, we respectfully request your favorable decision on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And because we couldn't hear the audio of it when you raised your hand, I just want to affirm that the testimony you just gave, you affirm to be the truth.
Oh, yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions for Mr. Delaney?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioners? Commissioner Axon.
Again, Mr. Chair, over abundance of caution, I have the same disclosure as before. As you know, Pacific Resource Partnership represents contractors signatory to the Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. But like I said, we are different organizations, independent from each other. I don't have any financial interests or benefits from this organization, and I can assure the public that I can be fair and impartial in delivering this regarding this docket.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Axon. Any further questions? If not, thank you for your persistence in letting us hear your oral testimony in addition to your written testimony. We appreciate it. I'm going to disable talking now. Thank you. And finally, Scott Enright has his hand raised and is going to be promoted as a panelist. Mr. Delaney, you can press *9 to lower your hand now, I believe. Good morning, Scott. Aloha.
Chair.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, it will be. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Scott Enright, 64735 Mamalahoa Highway, Waimea, 96743. And I am an agricultural consultant that's been working with AES on their agricultural plan. I just wanted to re-emphasize what I put in my written testimony to the commission. And that is, you know, in the time that I worked for the Department of Agriculture in both the Abercrombie and the Ige administration, I reviewed every application for solar on ag land. And this is the first one that I'm aware of, that the original agricultural pursuit, which is in this case ranching with Buddy Gibson, will be continued with improved infrastructure. I thought that's significant. There are limitations to the agricultural pursuits that can be done on this particular site. So keeping the existing agricultural enterprise that's been there since sugar went out almost 40 years ago, I think is significant. And with that, Chair, I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for the witness?
No questions. Thank you.
No questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions for former Director Enright? Seeing none, thank you very much for your written and your oral testimony. We really value it.
Thank you, Chair. Stay well.
You as well. Last call, is there anyone who is attending this meeting who wishes to provide oral testimony? If so, either use the raise your hand function or *9 if you are calling into this meeting. Seeing none, I'm going to close public testimony on this matter. It is 9:54. I will call a recess until 10:05, at which time we will proceed with the presentation from the petitioner. We're in recess. It is 10:05. We are back on the record. Mr. Tabata.
Thank you, Chair. AES West Oahu Solar LLC is requesting approval of its application for a special permit to allow the construction and operation of a 12.5 megawatt photovoltaic system plus a 50 megawatt hour battery energy storage system. The location of the project is in Lirido, Oahu, and is situated Mauka of H1 freeway and approximately 2 miles from Village Park in Waipahu, 3 miles from the west lock of Pearl Harbor, and about a half mile from the northeastern edge of Makakilo. The project area is a portion of an 861-acre parcel owned by UH West Oahu, and our project area is 96.353 acres. The project area is comprised of agricultural district lands that are partially classified B under the LSB ratings. As such, there is the requirement under HRS Chapter 205 that the project area be made available to compatible agricultural uses at rent no more than 50% fair market value. AES is mindful of the goal to promote agriculture and food self-sufficiency in Hawaii and is prepared to go beyond just making the land available at 50% rent. AES has collaborated with Aloha Bee LLC for honey production and Rocker G livestock for cattle grazing in the project area rent-free to ensure that there will be food production on the project site. If approved, the agricultural operations will become a legal requirement pursuant to the Planning Commission's condition number 2, which requires notification to the Planning Commission if AES fails to have agricultural operations for a 6-month period. If that happens, the Planning Commission will then have the option to reevaluate the special permit. The life of the project is 25 years pursuant to the power purchase agreement, and we are asking for a 29-year term for the special permit to allow additional time for permitting and construction. Pursuant to the PPA, the project needs to be operational by September 2022, and construction is expected to take up to a year, and permitting following the special permit will require approximately 4 months. The project is expected to generate clean electricity that will power 4,600 homes, replace 545,000 barrels of oil, 100,000 barrels of oil, create 118 jobs and $20 million of economic activity, and provide revenue to the University of Hawaii and further our state's goal to reach 100% renewable energy. Our archaeological inventory survey was accepted by the State Historic Preservation Division by letter dated January 4th, 2021, just 2 days before our Planning Commission's action hearing on January 6th, 2021, which gave us enough time to file the letter as an exhibit. This critical requirement of the project was accomplished because of the extraordinary efforts of Dr. Susan Lebo at SHPD and David Scheidler at Cultural Surveys Hawaii. Our cultural impact assessment includes the contribution of cultural practitioner Lynette Pagalinawan, who informed the petitioner on the need to cultivate Native Hawaiian plants in order to make restitution to the wandering spirits for the benefit of both the land and the people. AES has continued its discussions with Ms. Pagalinawan, and with her guidance have taken steps to promote Native Hawaiian plants in the HoKua and informing our landscape plan in the project area. Our obligation to follow her recommendations are memorialized in the Planning Commission's condition number 5. No endangered or threatened species of flora or fauna were observed on the property, but the Hawaiian hoary bat, pu'eo, and Hawaiian seabirds are known to travel in the area. In order to mitigate against potential impacts, mitigation measures have been identified in the application, which the Office of Planning is proposing to include as conditions of approval for wildlife and historical resource mitigation. AES, as mentioned by the chair, has no objections to OP's proposed conditions. The proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order that we filed is identical to the Planning Commission's findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order, except for one additional procedural paragraph and other changes specific to the Land Use Commission versus the Planning Commission. The conditions in the Planning Commission's DNO are identical to the conditions recommended in the Director's report. Therefore, we respectfully request that the Commission approve the Planning Commission's findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order with modifications to accommodate OP's new proposed conditions and approve our proposed DNO with the addition of OP's proposed conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tabata. Are there questions for the petitioner from?
The city has no questions.
Thank you. OP.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioners. Commissioner Cabral.
Yes, thank you, Chair and Mr. Tabata. Questions that came up, I heard it a little bit earlier and was trying to save time, but they're saying that they're going to put cattle on that land around the solar panels. And that came up when we were looking at the solar project, I think for the Robinson land on Kauai. And I questioned it then and they said, oh no, we've changed that to sheep. I raise cattle. They're very large and they rub against things. I would think that you may, unless they're going to have some kind of fencing to isolate it from being under and around the panels, you may want to reconsider cattle raising. I don't know what bees would do to what they'll do on top of your, they all cluster up there or something. But I would highly ask you to investigate, you said cattle, is that, and that's not, I should make a question, but anyway, my question is, are they sure they want to do cattle? Okay.
Yes, thank you for the question. The size of the cattle in relation to the panels is an issue that has come up. And, working with Rocker G Livestock, what we determined was that they can graze younger cattle, smaller cattle in the area. That's what they believe. And of course, we will continue working with them to make sure that there is compatibility. If fencing is required or other devices, then that will be explored. But yes, we are aware of the issue of the size of the cattle, and we have a plan, and we're still working on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just want to not have a problem for you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabral. Other questions for the petitioner at this time? Commissioner Don Chang.
Oh, thank you. And maybe Mr. Chair should ask you, is the petitioner going to put on evidence and the witnesses, or is this our opportunity to ask about specific, for example, the cultural impact assessment, or do we wait? What is the process?
Mr. Tabata.
My understanding is that we are working off the record here, and I am prepared to attempt to answer your questions. And if I'm unable to do so, then I believe our expert witnesses, some of them may be available and they may be able to answer questions. But if you have any questions for me, I will do my best to try to answer them.
Okay, very good. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciated the cultural impact assessment. I thought it was, I thought they did a good job. However, I disagree with the Kapa'akai analysis. I believe they've identified resources, but with respect to the impact of the project, in reviewing Lynette Paglinawan's her comments as part of the cultural impact assessment, she does talk about the uhane and the spirits who do continue to traverse the trails. And she expressed concerns about psychological trauma or harm that that may cause. And she shared experiences that she's heard stories about with respect to what was, West Oahu, as well as her own family's own personal experiences, not necessarily in this area. So, and I know she recommends for Ho'oponopono, the planting of the wall of trees. However, I think as mitigation, as additional mitigation, you have this valuable resource of Lynette Paglinawan, who is at West Oahu, and you do seem to be working, AES seems to be working with her. It really may be something to consider as mitigation for this spiritual harm, that there be some kind of a cultural orientation for all of the workers at AIS, that they go through a cultural orientation if Ms. Paglinawan is willing to do so, with respect to those resources and what they should do, or just so that they are aware of. Because I don't think the analysis in Kapa'akai, you can just say that there are no cultural resources. I think the spiritual is as significant as something you can touch. So that's my comment about the CIA. I thought there was reached out to a lot of people, good comments. You had Shag Connie, a lot of the people that I think who know that area. But I found Lynette's comments to be particularly significant. So I would have you consider that. Any comments to that? If we included something like that, a cultural orientation for all the AIS, anyone who works on this project, they work in coordination with West Oahu and Ms. Paglinawan on some kind of a cultural orientation.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Commissioner. And we appreciate that, those thoughts.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. I'm glad you're open to that, because you seem to be. I mean, I thought this was a well done, documentation. The other thing, and Mr. Tabata, I've got this real issue with performance bonds and ensuring that the developer is going to adhere by their commitments. And this developer does seem to be willing to do that. And even the proposed DNO, the proof of financial security to decommission. But let me first ask you, what is the estimated cost for decommissioning?
I don't believe we've calculated that yet. We may have, and I have people more knowledgeable than me feeding me information. 2.5 million is the initial estimate, which will be updated.
Because that's probably at today's value, not necessarily at year 25 or 26, or is that?
Right.
Okay.
I believe they would factor that in to their calculations.
Okay.
That would be reasonable, I think.
So it does say that they are going to show proof of their commitment. What does that mean?
They're going to need to satisfy the city, basically, according to statute, with a form of financial security. So the performance bond you mentioned is I think that is one option. And if that could be included in our condition as an option for the city to continue, what we don't want to do is hinder the city's ability to manage this responsibility. I think your excellent suggestion of including a performance bond, if that could be included as an option for the city to consider, then I think that may facilitate their responsibility to ensure financial security is provided.
And I appreciate you being open to that. And I think, and maybe as we continue on, you might suggest the appropriate place to insert that in the proposed DNO. Let me also ask you, in your condition 2, if at any time during the term of the SUP, no compatible agricultural operations exist on the usable lands of the petition area for 6 months after the initial 6 months, then the applicant shall notify Planning Commission. Does that mean in year 25 or year 24, they don't have, there's no ag use, so Planning Commission reopens this? I mean, how does that work as a practical matter with such an open-ended term?
Okay. The way I read condition 2 is if at any time there's 6 months where there's no active ag operating, we have to report that to the Planning Commission. Okay, at any time. Okay. So, and then once that, if that happens, and once that is done, if it's done, if there is a 6-month period of inactivity, then the Planning Commission will then have the power to call us back in front of them and conduct an inquiry. And the language of the condition provides for the Planning Commission to reevaluate the SUP. Reevaluate is, it's a broad term. We want to avoid that at all costs. So the way we're looking at condition 2 is a requirement that we have active agricultural operations on our property, and that's what we're striving for.
Okay, so as you explain it and reading it, I guess it's reasonable to assume that the Planning Commission has a discretion to take into consideration at what point in time during the lease or during the operations does that occur, what may be reasonable, appropriate actions. But essentially that's being left up to the Planning Commission to determine an appropriate course of action should for 6 months there be no agricultural activity. Is that correct?
That's correct. Again, our reading of condition 2 is that having agricultural operations on the property, actually having it, is a requirement, which the Planning Commission will have a power to enforce. And this goes beyond the statute, which only requires that we just make it, available at 50% rent. So we said we're going to have active agricultural operations in the form of honey and cattle. And the Planning Commission took that and is now making us live up to our words. And we're prepared to do that. Yes.
All right. Okay. I understand the intention and the intentional drafting of the language to give the Planning Commission that discretion. So, Mr. Chair, I have no other questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Chang. Commissioner Ohigashi.
Morning, Curtis. I wanted to ask you about, I think you, page 49, the section 16 of the conclusions of law. I gather that the decommission plan and the proof of financial security is the sole province of the Planning Commission. Is that correct? I'll read that.
I'm flipping to the page.
Also about 205A 45.
Can you repeat the question? I could not understand the question, Lee.
The question was, is proof of financial security to the decommission of the facility, is provided to the satisfaction of appropriate county planning commission. So I'm just asking if that proof satisfaction of appropriate or proof of financial security is a sole province of the county planning commission.
I believe, well, it may be DPP.
I'm just wondering who.
We are required to submit that proof to DPP, the proof of financial security, and I believe it's their discretion. I think the way it works is we provide it to DPP, and they approve it, and if they don't approve it, and if for some reason there's an issue, they can haul us back in front of the planning commission, and I think that may be the mechanism. But
I'll ask the county about that mechanism if that comes up tomorrow. I just wanted to be sure that it's in the county planning commission's jurisdiction to review that proof of financial.
I believe the planning commission has the authority to enforce its conditions.
The second thing I wanted to ask you is that under C.
Commissioner Ohigashi,
sorry.
When you turn away to read your screen, it's hard to hear you.
Yeah. Under C, small I, it says that the removal of all equipment within 12 months of the conclusion of operation or useful life. The useful life is 25 years. Does that mean it's 25 years? Whether or not it has concluded operation, or would that conclusion have to be somewhat modified so that it's clear or less clear?
Commissioner, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I caught all of that question.
Okay, it just says that you're going to stop or remove all the equipment within 12 months, conclusion of operation, or useful life. The useful life, according to your presentation, is 25 years. Does that mean, irrespective of conclusion of operation, that the useful life, 25 years, is a drop dead clause?
If there's getting a text, it's whichever comes first.
So you want to modify that proposed conclusion to say whichever comes first?
That would be helpful, I think.
I'm just curious. I was just curious when I read it. And well, I'll let you let us know before the end of.
Right. No, that would be helpful. I don't think we don't have an objection to that.
I'm just trying to clarify what you mean by that, because it can be read that, hey, if you're still operating, but the life expectancy has been reached, then you got to stop anyway. Or it could be read that if you add whichever is first, that means if you finish before the 24 years, then it will be stopped. To me, I'm just curious how it works on that. It's up to you how you want to.
Right. I think, okay, so I think the way the language works is the conclusion of the project is based on the 25 years, right? But the useful life, if for some reason the useful life is shortened by some reason, then we would need to decommission earlier. Okay,
This project is no longer than 25 years. That's what you're saying.
As of right now, that's the limits of our PPA. I mean, maybe in the future there may be we might seek an extension of the PPA, but then I guess we'll have to come back to you or to this body if that's in the cards. But right now, I believe that's the intent of this language is to ensure that we decommission at the appropriate time. Which that useful life, I believe, is a catch-all, which makes sure that we decommission at the appropriate time.
I just want to avoid confusion 25 years from now, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair. I want to follow up on a number of items that Commissioner Ohigashi has brought before us, and let me start by expressing my concurrence with his view that it's very troublesome to have these permits come before us represented by petitioners that are lessees and not the landowner. It just gives me trouble, but that's just a comment. Mr. Tabata, we heard from Ms. Govea of the UH about a so-called escrow fund that would accumulate funds to assure that could be used for remediation and restoration of the land at the conclusion of the lease. Could you explain what that is all about, or for us from your point of view, please?
Right. I think that an escrow account would be an option. That could be one way of providing financial security. I don't believe that the exact method has been determined yet. I think that's good in the works. I know they've already calculated the $2.5 million that will be required, which includes it's been factored in for inflation. So I think an escrow account is an option, and along with Commissioner Chang's suggestion about the performance bond. My only caution is this, that I don't think we want to limit the city's ability to manage this responsibility that it has by statute. They may suggest or require an escrow account or a performance bond. I think they're all excellent suggestions. It's just I would hope that we don't handcuff the city in being able to exercise their discretion and manage their responsibility effectively.
So I think I have a yes or no question for you. So my takeaway from Ms. Govea's testimony was that there was an agreement between the lessee and the landowner that you would establish an escrow account. Is that true, yes or no?
I don't have the answer to that right now, but the people who may have an answer to that is listening, and they can get it to me. But what I will say is this: even if we did have an agreement with the landowner that we're going to set up an escrow account, and that's going to suffice for the financial security, or we believe it'll suffice for the financial security of the decommissioning of the project, the final say is with the city, with the Planning Commission, whether or not that's sufficient or whether that's acceptable. So if there is such an agreement, I hope to get you an answer soon, whether or not there's an agreement between AES and UH to set up that escrow account. If so, then I should have that answer to you shortly.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's a simple question. It's yes or no, whether it already exists. Hypothetically, and I do not expect this, I'm very familiar with AES as a company, but hypothetically, if they were in distress and there was a breach in the lease and they disappeared midway through this or towards the end of this term of the permit, what assurances does this commission have that the owner would do the remediation?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, could you repeat that question again, please?
In the event that AES, and I'm not suggesting they will, it's just purely hypothetical, but there's a breach in the lease and they disappear and they walk away, what assurances does this commission have that the landowner will remediate the land to its existing condition, pre-existing condition?
Well, I can't speak for the landowner, but I'm sure the University of Hawaii will continue to be good stewards of its land and do what's necessary to maintain its lands. And as far as that, their ability to do so, the requirement that we provide financial security for the decommissioning of this property, which decommissioning is to restore it to its original state. That is the purpose for decommissioning. That's what it is. So there will be monies available for that work, regardless of the fate of AES. And as far as AES itself, just for your information, it is a large company. It's publicly held. It has $32 billion in assets. It operates in 14 different countries and has over 8,000 employees. So we are hopeful that they will be around to do what they're responsible to do. And if not, there will be funds available. There will be financial security provided to ensure that decommissioning takes place as promised.
Is it not true that within that $32 billion portfolio that from time to time that AES will sell and acquire other assets as such that this particular project might be owned by somebody else by the end of the term of the special permit?
That may be a possibility, but all of these responsibilities will run with the project, run with the land. So successors and assigns will be bound by all obligations. If that were to happen, if that's a possibility, that would be the case.
Let me shift gears on you a little bit and go to the second point that Mr. Commissioner Ohigashi brought up, which is about the term of the project and its useful life. As you can imagine, there have been a number of different utility scale solar projects that have come before this commission for approval for permits. And the testimony on record is that a 25-year term in many cases is inadequate to secure the long-term profitability of a project. And so these things are operated in a manner in which they continue to invest and replace components of the project and do seek an extension of the PPA in order to make the overall project profitable and to be able to win the competitive bids that awarded this project from HoKua. What that really means, what I'm really saying is it's very common that you'd be coming back before this commission or somebody would be coming back before this commission in 20 to 25 years and asking for an extension of this project or extension of the permit for this project. So I caution you to be very careful about your useful life language that you would accept that might trigger immediate decommissioning of this project.
It's an excellent point, Commissioner. And I would hope to be around and still retained by AES to bring that extension later. And hopefully also that the useful life of this project would be extended beyond the 25 years to justify a future request for an extension. If the Public Utilities Commission were to grant such an extension of the PPA. But yes, that's an excellent observation, and I believe people may be thinking about that.
Yeah, this commission has actually put in some of its permits a condition by which the term of the permit is automatically extended if and when HoKua executes a new PPA and it's approved by the PUC. So it might be a vehicle that would allow you to not have to come back and go through the full process again. It's just something to look at.
That sounds very attractive, although I would love to come back to you later, but
I won't be here, but that's okay.
I'm sure the client would appreciate having a condition like that. Maybe we can offer a draft of that language.
You only say that, Mr.
I'm just making
Tabata.
the observation. Thank you. No further questions or comments, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. You're only happy to come back in 25 years knowing that none of these commissioners will be here, I'm sure, Mr. Tabata. Commissioner Axon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Tabata. Just to follow up on the discussion about the decommissioning and also who's responsible. Just try to understand on condition 4, it says the applicant, assignee, or landowner is responsible. So, so the landowner is part of the condition, correct?
I believe you're right, Commissioner.
So if applicant or assignees didn't do it, then the landowner end up, responsible, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
On condition 3, the valid permit is 29 years. Within that 29 years, is that the commissioning timeline is embedded to these 29 years?
I believe so.
So within the 29 years, the decommissioning, restoration, everything is done by the 29 years.
That's correct.
So let me just, on the project operation and useful life, I can understand when the project operation is done, it's done. So I'm just trying to figure out what is the legal expiration, the 29 years or the useful life, or
well, the 25 years is the operational period for the project. I mean, generating electricity. The 29 years includes the 25 years of generating electricity, and also additional time, 4 more years for the decommissioning that you pointed out, along with additional permitting yet to be done and the construction of the project.
so regardless, 29 years is the drop date unless it's extended.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Then with all these conditions, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. You can answer. All these conditions are enforced by the county or the planning commission.
Yes.
So they have the enforcement powers for all these conditions.
That's my understanding. Yes.
And changing the subject, what is the current activity for this land right now?
They're raising cattle.
Raising cattle.
Right.
So,
yes.
So my understanding is now currently you're raising cattle, and with this project, solar is going to be continued, right?
Yes, the existing use will be continued. Yes.
So whether this permit is approved or not, it's going to be continuing with the raising cattle, right?
That's correct.
So there's no really loss on that portion, right? On the production of cattle or raising cattle.
There will be equipment and facilities constructed, which will displace some of the land, but the remaining land will be made available for cattle. It will continue to be made available for cattle.
You seen Senator Fabella's testimony and also other public testimonies opposing the project. One is lack of community outreach and loss of food production. What what can you say about those?
Okay, as far as public outreach, there was a environmental assessment that was accepted by the city. And in that process, there was consultation and outreach with all federal, state, county agencies, stakeholders, organizations, the normal course in complying with Chapter 343. So there were numerous meetings, numerous communications, comments were received, and that all took place during the EA process. And then a public notice was issued. When the application was filed in August of 2020, the city issued a notice of application for special use permit, which was mailed to everybody as far as the federal, state, and county government. And then there was a hearing, and again, notice was published. So I believe there was adequate consultation, community outreach, extensively done. And, you know, I believe that took care of it. I regret, having that the senator feels otherwise. Perhaps if he were to contact AES, we could have some discussions, and perhaps alleviate some of his concerns. As far as food production, we believe we have an agricultural project. Okay, our project is agricultural, and we're going to make food production. We're going to enhance it and make it possible. Honey production is not currently on the property. We've gone out and had discussions and are working with the honey producer, Steve Montgomery, as you folks know, and we will make the land free of rent, subsidize the operations in that respect, along with cattle, free rent, and make the land more productive for food production. So, we do take exception to any accusation that we are decreasing the food production on the land. We believe we'll be increasing it, and we're proud of that.
Thank you, Mr. Tabata, for those clarification and also addressing the community concerns. I just want to kind of have you the opportunity to address those concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Axon. Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I had two questions, but Commissioner Axon's question took care of question number one. Mr. Tabata, if I can ask you regarding question number two, and the reason why I'm asking this is just so that even though, and it's not to prejudge anything, even though your presentation has clearly addressed Article 11, Section 1 of the Constitution regarding the direction that we seek self-sufficiency. Can I ask you this question? I noticed in your presentation, and including the Planning Commission's findings, that the cost of generation of electricity is actually going to be less costly to the consumer with this project as compared with a traditional oil burning fossil fuel power plant. What is the cost savings? And a percentage or however you want to describe it would be fine, just so that we get some idea of that.
Thank you, Commissioner. There was an excellent presentation prepared by the AES team in front of the Planning Commission. And I have their outline. So it says here there will be 0.106 kilowatt hours low and stable costs in dollars. I'm not sure how that translates to dollar amounts like per ratepayer or for the island in total. Perhaps somebody will provide me that information from the team. But my understanding is this, as was discussed during the public testimony, our solar project in West Oahu will be the first or one of the first stage 1 projects that is intended to replace the coal-fired plant in September 2022. And the alternative or the risk of the solar, our solar plant and also other solar facilities, if they don't come online in time, my understanding is that Hawaiian Electric may be required to generate electricity at its other oil-fueled power plants. And we don't know what the price of oil will be at that time, but I believe there's a possibility that it may be considerably higher than the cost of solar. So,
well, if we look at current pricing, is it true or not true that the cost of production from solar, even taking into the infrastructure costs, however you amortize it over time, is cheaper or lower to the consumer compared with the consumer being charged for electricity for being generated by fossil fuel types of plants here in Hawaii?
I believe that's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, and I understand that corporations have a right to make a profit and take money out of state, and there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But is it true or not true that by generating electricity using solar, it's one way of stopping the export of our local money, which otherwise would be exported to pay for oil or fossil fuels being imported into the state?
Yes, I believe that's true.
It kind of goes along with the agricultural idea that to the extent we can grow more food locally, it would mean that we would keep the money within the community and not export it out, for example, to buy items which we could actually grow here. It's kind of consistent with that, right?
Correct. That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tabata. And my usual tagline is, I'm not hypnotized necessarily by your presence or anything like that, because I think 2 dockets ago, I was a sole vote against what you were advocating. So, these are, I'm not trying to ask questions just to give you a pass or anything, but I thought it's important that we bring out the cost structure and the fact that there's nothing wrong with having an environmentally conscious project that actually can make money or savings for the local community. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Giovanni, followed by Commissioner Chang. My hope is we might be able to get through the questioning of the presenter before our next, the petitioner before our next break.
Yeah, quickly, I just wanted to share my perspective on the financial issue that Commissioner Okuda brought up in an attempt to mitigate any confusion on this matter. As the evidence in this case already shows, the existing coal-fired power plant, its power purchase agreement is going to terminate in September and it's going to go away. In the absence of any projects like the West Oahu AS solar project, that power will have to be replaced by oil-fired, just as Mr. Tabata said. And that's much more expensive than the coal, because coal's the cheapest. Now, whether or not the solar is less expensive than the coal that's going away, that depends on the price of coal at the time, and some projects are, and some solar projects are, and some are not. But the key is that the coal is going away and you got to replace it with something. And the solar project is a far preferred option as compared to using the existing oil plants and importing oil to do that. Is that consistent with your understanding, Mr. Tabata?
Yes, it is, Commissioner.
Thank you. No, nothing further.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Chang.
One question, Mr. Tabata, did AES present this to the neighborhood board, this project? And if so, what was the neighborhood board's, did they take any action?
I believe they attempted to. When we filed our application in August 2020, and I believe it was a few months later, COVID hit. And it was, so at the beginning of the process, after the application was accepted for processing by DPP, COVID was in full swing. And I don't think we were successful in actually having a presentation before the neighborhood board. I believe there were no neighborhood board meetings at the time, prior to our action meeting in front of the Planning Commission. But there were contacts made with the chair of the neighborhood board. Who was briefed and informed and kept up to date. So that was the best we could do. That's my understanding.
Because I have since, during COVID, I've done presentations to various neighborhood boards. So even after the Planning Commission, or even prior to the Planning Commission, AES did not try again to go before the neighborhood board. Is that what you're saying?
I believe they were planning to, but by the time the pandemic hit, it just wasn't possible. And so what they did the best they could as an alternative was to make contact and have discussions with the chair. But to answer your question, no, there was no presentation made to the neighborhood board.
Are they planning to go before the neighborhood board to do any kind of presentation to the community, even though it's already been approved by the Planning Commission?
I'm not sure.
Because this community is really actively involved, so I was just wondering, because the consultation under the EA is not as, there are prescribed agencies that you consult with. There's not a community engagement.
Commissioner, I need to correct myself. There was a presentation made in August of 2020 to the neighborhood board. Yes, there was a presentation made.
And was any action taken by the neighborhood board?
No action was taken.
Okay, all right. And what neighborhood board was that?
Number 34.
Which is that the Kapolei? Or
Makakilo.
Makakilo? Okay.
Makakilo Kapolei.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. I have no other questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Chang. Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tabata, for coming up. I just have a couple questions regarding this issue. The first one is more, because Makakilo is kind of hilly, in terms of, when it rains, will there be any erosions or anything that we stop this erosion?
The level of ground disturbance that will be required for the project is not expected to increase any runoff. There will be an increase in impermeable surface, so there will be trenching. Trenching will be done to capture the runoff. And that is anticipated to be sufficient for management of water runoff.
Yeah, I guess just because, you know, not during this period, but previously we've been having some heavy rain, and I have some friends that live up there, and they said, yeah, the rain was so bad in Makakilo area that there was some runoff from, you know, their neighbors up the hill coming down the street. So just wondering if we're going to use best management practices for this issue.
That's correct. Best management practices will be used.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that it will be used. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioners, anything further for Mr. Tabata? If not, I'd like to suggest it's 11:01. We take a 9-minute recess till 11:10. Hear from any comments from the county and the Office of Planning, any final comments from any of the parties, and move on to deliberation following that. Is that acceptable? Okay, it's 11:01, recess till 11:10.
Good, Curtis.
Okay, these are fast minutes somehow. It's 11:10. Commissioner Wong, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Commissioner Chang,
Yes, so sorry.
no, all good. Okay, we are back on the record. It's 11:10 a.m. During the break, I was forwarded our executive officer was contacted by the interveners counsel for the subsequent docket, who believes that the closure of the HoKua Place matter, being that there is an unobjected to motion to withdraw, might be a quick formality, and the intervener is concerned about the impact on his client, or the interveners counsel on the impact of his client having to sit through this docket. That said, I don't also have the impression that this particular proceeding, which is going to go into presentations from the county and the Office of Planning, is going to take particularly long in deliberation. So I have a few questions related to that. First of all, county and OP, how long do you intend to take for your presentations on this matter?
Dwayne Pang for the county. We just have a statement of support regarding the proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law,
Okay.
and will be available for any questions.
Okay, Ms. Kato.
I expect only about 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Do the commissioners, maybe show of hands, do you anticipate significant questions for either the county or the Office of Planning? Okay. My preference for the flow of it is an inexact art at best to be the chair of this commission. And I often am horribly wrong at guessing how long things will take. And I do my best to prioritize really the time of the public, and then our commissioners who are volunteers, as well as unpaid interveners. Unfortunately, sometimes there is just an impact. We have a number of things in our docket. So I'd like to proceed with continuing our matters. I suspect that we will be able to conclude these matters before our next break and pause and take up the final matter on our agenda. So with that, let's hear from the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Again, Dwayne Pang, Deputy Corporation Counsel on behalf of the City and County of Honolulu. As you know, this matter was presented to the city's Planning Commission. They adopted some proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law. They are very consistent with applicants' proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law that are before you. We support those. We also support the State Office of Planning additional conditions with respect to revisions of Condition 7 and the addition of conditions 13, 14, and 15. As the commissioners had inquired, the Planning Commission, more specifically Department of Planning and Permitting, will continue jurisdiction over the enforcement of this permit. And we are open to any questions that the commissioners have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peng. Are there questions for the county? Commissioner Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Peng. Do you have any objections to amending condition number 6 to add performance bond as an option?
We have no objections with respect to an option. As Mr. Tabata said, we don't want to interfere with the agreements between his client and UH, and I guess the Department of Planning and Permitting reviewing. But if that's one of the options, yes, we'll be glad to look into that.
Okay, now I appreciate that, Mr. Peng, because ultimately, should the university be held holding the bag? It's not the university, it's all the taxpayers. So I just want to make sure that there is some kind of source of funds for the decommissioning and the removal. But if you have no objections, I'll appreciate that and note that. So no other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Chang. Other questions for the City and County of Honolulu? Seeing none, Ms. Kato.
Thank you, Chair. The Office of Planning recommends approval of the state special use permit for this project, subject to the additional conditions as described in our statement that will address the state's concerns with respect to impacts to wildlife and archaeological and historic resources. The Office of Planning agrees that the proposed project meets the criteria for an unusual and reasonable use within the state agricultural land use district. And based on the Land Study Bureau's classification, solar facilities are allowed outright on half of the project site and allowed with a special permit on the other half, subject to certain requirements related to decommissioning and use in conjunction with compatible agricultural uses at reduced rates. The proposed project appears to meet those requirements as described. Any adverse impacts from the proposed project can be mitigated with appropriate conditions. And additionally, the Office of Planning recognizes the important state interest in reducing dependence on fossil fuels and encouraging locally produced renewable energy. With respect to the conditions that we propose, our written submission contains the specific language of the conditions recommended. The first is a revision of condition 7 of the DNO to include the petitioner's proposed mitigation measures that are indicated in the application on pages 45 and 46. And those incorporate, as the applicant mentioned, those incorporate recommendations provided by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Division of Forestry and Wildlife through communications that are in attachment O to the application. These mitigation measures are to address the finding that several threatened and endangered wildlife species could occur in the project area, such as the Hawaiian hoary bat, the Hawaiian short-eared owl, and Hawaiian and seabird and waterbird species. The other recommended conditions are conditions to address the State Historic Preservation Division's concerns and recommended mitigation measures that are included in the letter dated January 4th, 2021, with SHPD's review and approval of the revised archaeological inventory survey. So the mitigation measures are intended to mitigate adverse impacts to 2 identified historic properties in the project area. These mitigation measures were not included as conditions in the Planning Commission's DNO findings of fact, conclusions of law and decision order. And that's why Office of Planning is recommending that these mitigation measures be added as new conditions 13 through 15. Again, the Office of Planning recommends approval of the special use permit for this project, provided that the additional conditions cited in OP's memorandum of June 7, 2021 are included as conditions to AIS's approval. Thank you. No further comments.
Thank you, Ms. Kato. Questions for the Office of Planning? commissioners? Seeing none. Mr. Tabata, final statement, if any. Oh, we cannot hear you for some reason.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had my microphone on off. We do have additional language for the conditions to address the commissioner's statements.
Would you
If-
be able to go over those?
Yes, I am. With respect to a performance bond, we can make a change to proposed condition number 6. And looking at the second sentence, it reads, such proof may include, comma, but not be limited to, comma, a posted letter of credit, and then insert, comma, letter of credit, insert performance bond, and then continue on, or similar mechanism from a creditworthy financial institution. So there would be, the performance bond would be inserted as an option after the letter of credit. That's one change, proposed change.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause right there. I just want to, Commissioner Chang, does that address your?
That's perfect. That's exactly where I would have inserted that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Please continue, Mr. Tabata.
And also with respect to the cultural orientation and education suggested by Commissioner Chang, a new condition can be included, which would read, petitioner shall ensure project staff and crew undergo a cultural orientation and training prior to the start of construction, period. Cultural orientation shall be conducted by practitioners such as Ms. Lynette Paglinawan or other recognized cultural practitioners from the area, period. And I believe those are the two additional changes that was suggested by the commissioners. If I missed something, please correct me.
Okay, Commissioner Ohigashi.
We get a response about the issue of whether an escrow account has been negotiated?
There was, I don't believe there was a escrow account agreed upon or negotiated.
Did you have anything further, Mr. Tabata?
No, just those two proposed changes.
Okay, Commissioner Giovanni.
In the absence of a pre-existing agreement for an escrow account, would it be agreeable to add to that condition where you inserted performance bond to insert another option for an escrow account?
We could, yes. So the insertion in that part of the second sentence of condition 6 would read, comma, performance bond, comma, escrow account, and then go on to read or similar mechanism. That way we'll have the two as options.
Commissioner Giovanni.
Yeah, that's about as good as we can do today, I think.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Tabata. I would just ask you consider and I appreciate the cultural orientation and education. I had drafted this language. Think about it. As mitigation for impacts to cultural resources, petitioner shall coordinate with West Oahu University to provide cultural orientation and education to AES and its contractors associated with this project prior to construction. Did you have a construction? Because it's hard, I mean, who are going to be the cultural practitioners? So I think it is easier for the AES if they're dealing with West Oahu University. there are many cultural practitioners, but I think West Oahu is where Lynette is from. And in my view, I think it's important to acknowledge that this mitigation is really for purposes, it is as mitigation to the impacts to cultural resources.
Yes, I think your language is better. We agree to that. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. No other.
So I would note at this time, I believe the proper name for the institution is West Oahu.
Okay, okay.
West Oahu.
But, you know,
Yeah.
let the intention be we're trying to refer to that institution, even if it's not correct. Commissioner Axon.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if it was covered earlier on the condition number 3. If we can insert the approval of time extensions will be required from the Land Use Commission. I don't know if it was addressed earlier.
I don't believe it was. And I'm familiar with this. Commissioner Axon, is your request to the applicant that it be clarified in condition 3 that the Land Use Commission is the authority that has to approve any time extension?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tabata?
Yes, I believe that is the case. And we would be agreeable to change to reflect that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tabata.
Thank you.
Anything further, Commissioner Axon? Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, Chair. First, items is, I know that we just changed 2 conditions. Is the city agreeable and also OP agreeable? City agreeable with these 2 conditions?
Thank you, Commissioner Chang. The city does not have any opposition to the proposed changes from Commissioners Chang or anything else that was submitted by Mr. Tabata.
Does OP have any comment?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
We thanked you for your response, Mr. Pang, and the question was then posed to Ms. Cottle.
The Office of Planning has no objection to the conditions. Thank you.
Chair, the other thing I wanted to add is if we can add several other conditions or add one more condition.
Please proceed.
Mr. Tabata, as you know, my question was about the erosion and water runoff. So I wrote something down that says this: the applicant shall develop and operate the facility, including the implementation of measures to mitigate potential impacts of the project in substantial compliance with representations made to the Planning Commission and the LUC as reflected in the decision order. Such mitigation measures include, but not limited to, the use of temporary and permanent best management practices to ensure the development and operation of the facility does not result in an increase in stormwater runoff that adversely impacts downstream properties. Failure to so develop the petition area may result in the revocation of the SP, special permit.
Mr. Tabata.
That sounds acceptable.
Okay. Let me check. Any objections from the county or OPE?
No objections from the county.
No objections from OP. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further, Commissioner Wong?
Yeah, so I was reviewing the conditions that was drafted. So in condition 1, I was wondering, there's a portion in there that says extension to this deadline may be granted to the director of the Department of Planning and Permitting for unforeseen extenuating circumstances. Can we take out the word for unforeseen extenuating circumstances and replace it with due to unforeseen circumstances that were beyond the control of the applicant?
Okay, Mr. Tabata.
That sounds okay.
Okay. County OP.
No objections from the county.
No
Then,
objections.
sorry,
Okay.
Ms. Kato.
Thank you. No objections.
I'm gonna continue on if you don't mind, Chair.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Looking at condition 8 regarding the project establishment period and allowance for extension. So there's a sentence in there that says the planning commission may grant an extension to the deadline to establish the project due to unforeseen circumstances. Can I put, I'm still debating, but I wanted to put the land use commission in there also. So, you know, because this, so can we instead say planning commission and land use commission? Or just land use commission? I'm not unsure on this one, Chair. So I need your.
I believe since it's a condition on the special permit from the LUC, that the LUC is approving, it would be the LUC, but Mr. Tabata, do you have, I guess, reaction to the overall concept as well as any preferred language?
We have no objection to Commissioner Wong's suggestion.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion as to whether it should simply replace the planning reference to the, right now, the sentence reads, the planning commission may grant an extension to the deadline to establish the project due to unforeseen circumstances that were beyond the control of the applicant. It would now read, the land use commission may grant an extension to the deadline.
That's okay with us, but we would love, you know, Dwayne, Mr. Pang should be given an opportunity to comment.
Commissioner. Yes.
This is Dwayne from the city. I think I just want to clarify the extension, if requested, would go directly to the land use commission rather than through the Department of Planning and Permitting, planning commission, and then to the land use commission. I just wanted to clarify, because if there is an extension, you know,
what
we
the
just wanna
process
know-
would be.
Yeah, what the process would be.
Mr. Wong, Commissioner Wong.
Yeah. So, Chair, as you said that this is a LUC, so I wanted to make sure that the LUC is also in the loop somehow. Because this is what's coming back. Let's say there is an extension. I mean, I'm not going to be here.
This is just for the project.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put that the land use commission also has a bite at this apple.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Giovanni.
The key word in that condition is establishment, which means commencement or the commissioning or construction activities, not the extension of the term of the use permit. I think that's the province of DPP, not the Land Use Commission.
So Commissioner Giovanni, you're speaking against having the LUC have an approving role on the extension of deadline?
If there's a delay in the establishment, I don't want it coming back to us. Our role is to give them a permit of 29 years to do their permitting, their construction, their operation, and their decommissioning, and not get involved in between each of the steps.
I think, thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. The concern might be, and I'm just guessing here, is that though, if there's a delay, how would it affect the 29-year timeframe? Would it be acceptable that the concept here is that the LUC has some role in the approval of extension of deadlines and that staff would be authorized to develop acceptable language work?
Well, for me, if there's a consequential, unforeseen element that threatens or otherwise requires extension of the 29 years, then I think it comes back to the LUC. But projects of this sort have always unfold differently than originally planned. And I don't want changes in the timeline to always require the developer to come back to the LUC.
And-
That's a
and-
bureaucratic nightmare that's unnecessary in my view. If it
thank you.
does result, and they know that they're going to need more than 29 years for whatever reason, then they have to come back to us.
So I believe, let me first clarify, Commissioner Wong, is that generally the intent of the language you were proposing?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so I recognize that Commissioner Axon has had his hand up patiently, and Commissioner Okuda, are you trying to speak on this particular issue?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Axon followed by Commissioner Okuda.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Wong. I would prefer striking the word planning and insert land use commission. The reason why is this will be consistent on condition number 3, which I believe the petitioner agreed to insert approval of time extension shall be required from the land use commission. So it will kind of pretty much in line with condition number 3.
Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would ask that the condition actually be left as is, and this is the reason why. If it's a really serious type of breach of representations or a serious breach or a significant breach of timeline, then it would be a violation of the representations made by the petitioner, and an order to show cause could be issued at that point in time. On the other hand, if it's something that a breach which is probably can be quickly satisfied or fixed, I'm not sure if it's really worth using up the resources of the Land Use Commission. And so in that case, an order to show cause doesn't have to be issued. So I would just ask that we kind of kick this can down the road and use the order to show cause procedure so that if it's an important thing, we can raise it through an order to show cause. If it's not, then we don't. So I'd urge we just leave the condition as is. Thank you.
Commissioner Ohigashi.
I would urge that, however, I would also include into that condition a requirement of informing the Land Use Commission of any type of delay in the establishment. And the other thing too is I'm not even clear about what establish means, but does it mean start? Does it mean? That's what I'm concerned. But I think that we should at least be notified if there's any delay in the start of the construction.
Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Commissioner Giovanni.
I agree with the point that Commissioner Okuda suggested that we leave as is, although I do think that Commissioner Ohigashi raises a good point, and I would like to be informed. So if a modification to that condition is done, I would limit it to just informing us so that we could take action if necessary.
Okay. Let me assess where I think we are at. The petitioner has agreed to propose conditions originating from comments from Commissioner Chang regarding the use of a performance bond as one option, and Commissioner Giovanni regarding use of an escrow account as one option for project infrastructure removal and restoration of the land. Petitioner has accepted a condition related to cultural impact mitigation and training for personnel offered by Commissioner Chang. I believe the petitioner has agreed, at least in concept, to the proposed conditions from the Office of Planning, and I think they affirmatively agreed to the findings. There's not an agreement or consensus on this particular condition. So I want to put it aside for the moment. Are there any further conditions that the commission concerned with? And I would urge my fellow commissioners to, rather than offering specific language, offer concepts that we can agree on and authorize the staff in any motion to draft language that is appropriate. Are there any further concerns? Commissioner Wong.
Sure, just two more. do we, you know that one we just was talking about the.
Yes.
I just would retract that and just say, just inform us. That
Okay.
was it. That's,
Okay.
and then there's two more issues, sorry. Just to ensure that we get annual reports on this issue, like all other projects we have.
Okay.
And the only other thing that I know, sorry, Commissioner Chang, I might be going into your area, but just to be somehow talking about if anything, you know, any EV or other cultural issues are found when they're digging up in construction, that there's something in there to say Shipti or Barrier Council will be informed.
Standard language.
Sure. Yeah,
Standard language about the discovery, inadvertent discovery of remains. Okay.
That's all. That's about it.
So the I'm going to go through by Mr. Tabata, the county, and the Office of Planning. There's 3 proposed changes. One which would change the earlier discussed condition simply to require informing the Land Use Commission of any delays that would be approved by the County Planning Commission. The second would be to include a provision just mentioned regarding the discovery of inadvertent remains. And the final one would be the requirement of annual reports, as is common on the UC dockets. Are there any concerns with those 3 proposed changes to the decision and order, in addition to all the other ones that I have summarized to this point?
AES has no objection, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Pang. You're muted. There you
Yeah,
go.
I'm sorry. The city doesn't have objections to those conditions. I just want to point out that one of the conditions, a proposed condition is in number 10, it says any major modification, which including establishing the project, which may push the 29 years further down, it does have to be approved by the Land Use Commission. So all of that major modifications should be go to the Land Use Commission.
Thank you
But
very
minor
much.
modifications, maybe a tweak in the establishment within a month or 2, which may not affect the 29 years, that would be approved by DPP and the Planning Commission. But otherwise, we don't have any further objections to the additional conditions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pang. Ms. Kato.
Sorry, I think one of those conditions is already in our proposed, Office of Planning's proposed conditions.
Okay, so it's duplicative.
Yeah, condition 13 related to inadvertent fines.
Okay, so you don't object to it?
I don't object to it, or the others.
Okay, Mr. Ordenker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out as a kind of a point of order that we kind of went into deliberations without motion.
Yeah, I was recognizing that myself. I decided to let it go because it required some discussion with the parties. But I think we are close to being done. Commissioner Wong.
Chair, I gotta apologize. I should have done that, but I would like to make that motion so we can start in this.
Okay, let me just see if there's any further questions for any of the parties from any of the commissioners. Seeing none, is there a motion that somebody wishes to make? Commissioner Wong.
Okay, Chair, I'll make that motion. And I don't know how to state it because we went through all these conditions and changes. So I just want to say everything that we talked about, put it in that motion. The one with Mr. Tabata, Commissioner Chang, and myself, and let the staff work on it.
Let me suggest, or perhaps memorialize slightly better for the transcript.
Thank you, Chair.
It would be to approve the project with the conditions from proposed in the decision and order by the applicant with the following modifications. Modification to cultural impact as suggested by Commissioner Chang. Modifications to guarantees of funding as suggested by Commissioners Chang and Giovanni. Modifications to require substantial compliance and including specifically compliance with best management practices as suggested by Commissioner Wong. Notification of major changes that would delay the project as suggested by Commissioner Wong. The changes suggested by the Office of Planning. And the change, there's one last one that was the second to last one from Commissioner Wong. The
Annual report, Chair.
The annual report. Is that your motion?
Thank you for saying it succinctly.
Thank you. Commissioner Axon?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe I made some changes on a condition number 3, which was okayed by the petitioner.
Thank you. And specifically?
The approval of time extension shall be required from the Land Use Commission.
Yeah. So including those changes as well. Is that included in your motion, Commissioner Wong?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, we have a motion before us. Is there a second? Commissioner Cabral?
I'll support my fellow Commissioner Wong in his motion and appreciate our chair for clarifying it. I'll make a second to that motion.
Okay, we are in, I would also sort of suggest that based on the discussion, the motion includes the stipulation that the staff are empowered to do the specific wordsmithing of these conditions where that wordsmithing wasn't fully determined.
Absolutely.
Chair,
Yes.
can I add one more condition or one more statement? That
Commissioner
you
Wong?
sign this, sign the motion.
That the chair be authorized to execute? Okay.
Thank you.
Are you okay with that clarification, Commissioner Cabral? Sorry to everyone for witnessing the sausage making, but here we are. We do actually now have a motion in front of us. Is there any, since we have in many ways discussed the merits of all these various amendments, does anybody wish to speak to the motion? Commissioner Ohigashi.
I'm gonna support the motion, and the reason why is that I believe that through the deliberations that we've made it a better project. However, I'm still in concern about the fact that we do not have the owner online. I know that, and I read that part of the proposed decision and order which is number 4, that identifies the landowner. And that's why I asked the landowner if they agreed to the conditions. And they said they cannot agree, essentially. So I just took it at that and figured that we're going to have to move on from there. The issue here, though, is that the blessing here is that the landowner is the state of Hawaii. It's a curse and a blessing. If the person doesn't do the required required remedial work on the property, then it'll be up to us as taxpayers, since we own the land. And if it was a private ownership of land, I may have voting differently. But since we know that we can beat ourselves up and require ourselves to pay for it, I'm supporting this.
Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will be voting in favor of this motion, but I join in the concern raised by Commissioner Ohigashi, and also for a slightly different reason. I believe that not only in this case, but other matters, the University of Hawaii should affirmatively demonstrate to the community that it stands behind good stewardship of its land. Now, I'm not saying that as a matter of fact, sometimes stewardship might not be good or bad, but whenever there's a perception that stewardship is not being properly done by the university, it starts becoming its own reality in the community. So I hope that there would be an affirmative actions taken by the university to start chipping away at the perception by those in the community that believe that the university is not necessarily being a good steward of certain of its resources. Very quickly, Chair, this project satisfies Article 11, Section 1 of the Hawaii State Constitution, which requires us, and let me quote this, to promote, and that's a quote, promote the development and utilization of these resources in a manner consistent with their conservation and in furtherance of the self-sufficiency of the state, close quote. The Constitution directs us to seek self-sufficiency, and I believe that this project satisfies that directive. Finally, I'd like to thank Mr. Tabata for a comprehensive and a very good legal presentation, which actually shortens a lot of the time we have to spend on this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioner Axon, followed by Giovanni.
Mr. Chair, I believe Commissioner Giovanni raised his hand first. I can go after him.
Commissioner Giovanni.
Am I to proceed? I'm happy to let Commissioner Axon go first.
Please go ahead.
I'm going to be voting in favor of this motion. I think it's a very important and timely project. And I think the developer that will be executing the project is credible and has demonstrated in the industry that it's capable of doing so. And it's consistent with the energy policy of the state and the needs of the electric power industry. And everything's going in the right direction. So I'm going to be supporting it. And I appreciate the willingness of the parties to accept the conditions as revised by the suggestion of the commissioners. However, I am very disturbed, as my fellow commissioners are, Ohigashi and Okuda, with the role that's being played by the landowner in this process. I thought it was remarkable in a negative way that an officer of the University of Hawaii couldn't commit to abide by a condition to remediate the land back to agriculture under any circumstance. They had to go refer it to some legal review or such. I am very disturbed by that, and I just wanted to put that on the record. But I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Axon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With my fellow commissioner, I will be happy to support the motion. And hopefully, this is a good project which will enable the state of Hawaii to reach its goal on renewable energy, and also continuing the current operation of grazing or agricultural use of the project. And I'm hoping it will help also UH West Oahu with their self-sufficiency. With all the conditions that commissioners and the petitioner agreed upon, I am very comfortable that all those conditions addresses the commissioners and also the public's concern. So I will be voting a yes for this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there Commissioner Cabral?
Sorry if I was unmuted earlier. I'm going to support this. I've been trying to stay quiet, but obviously the project and the need for the project, I mean, if the other power plant's going down in like 16 months, there's critical need. And I've overseen 6 large, for the Big Island, large solar projects, and it takes a long time to get them not just up, it takes longer to get HELCO or the HECO to finally turn them on. So God willing, you can meet your deadlines. But I'm in favor of the project, and I appreciate my fellow commissioners because it feels like we, due to historically bad problems with particularly energy projects, leaving the citizens around to clean up the mess. I appreciate the enormous amount of effort to try and put in safeguards, and God willing, that and we can save problems down the road. So appreciate that. Going to support the project and appreciate all the conditions that have been developed to do that. I feel like we've had to write up a prenup or something before we get married. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabral. Commissioner Ohigashi.
I was volunteering to write up the prenup.
Are there other comments from the commissioners? I'm going to join in stating my support for the project, my appreciation for council, for the petitioner, the work of the city and Office of Planning, and particularly the comments of reservation regarding the landowners statements from as shared by Commissioner Giovanni, and the concern over the exit from special permit conditions as expressed by Commissioners Ohigashi and Okuda. Is there anything further? If not, Mr. Orodenko, please poll the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion is to grant special permit for all the conditions as set forth in the proposed DNO by the petitioner, and add conditions suggested by the Office of Planning and suggested by the commissioners, including the addition of a performance bond as an option in condition 6 on escrow account. Add a new condition regarding cultural orientation and training requirements as suggested by Commissioner Chang. Add a condition, amend a condition regarding approvals of extensions to include the Land Use Commission. Add additional conditions regarding erosion for Commissioner Wong. Add clarification of extenuating circumstances language as proposed by Commissioner Wong. Add a condition regarding inadvertent discovery of remains and archaeological sites for Commissioner Wong. Add Commissioner Axon's change regarding extensions, and have the staff be empowered to draft specific language with regard to those conditions, and that the chair be authorized to sign the decision of order. I think I covered everything. Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Cabral.
Yes.
Commissioner Okuda.
Yes.
Commissioner Ohigashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Giovanni.
Aye.
Commissioner Chang.
Aye.
Commissioner Axon.
Yes.
Chair Schreier.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes unanimously with 8 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tabata.
Chair, if I may, am I correct in understanding that an additional adoption hearing will not be required for this docket, since the commission has all the language necessary to complete the decision in order, and that the chair has been authorized to sign the document? I asked this point of clarification only because our backs are to the wall.
Yeah,
as far as
I
timing
believe that
goes.
is the case, Mr. Orodenko.
Mr. Chair, I believe we can do that, given the authorization for the chair to sign.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Tabata. I would like to, in the interest of time and in the hopes that unlike our previous 2 docket items, the Kauai docket will go quickly. I'd like to just take a 1-minute recess, allow the parties who are on the current docket to leave the meeting and we'll begin with HoKua Place. It's 11:58. We will begin at noon. Briefest of recesses. Ms. Ahu, Ms. Higuchi, Mr. Collins.
Lance
Yes?
Collins is a Zoom froze, sorry. So just, he might take a little while.
Mr. Collins is what?
Sorry, Mr. Collins' Zoom his computer is frozen, so he might take a little while, but we can
Understood.
proceed with me. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, it is 12. And sorry, do we have Mr. Collins? Okay, we're going to proceed noting the statement from Ms. Isaki. Our next agenda item is a continued action on docket number A11-791, HG Kauai Joint Venture LLC, HoKua Place, Kauai, a petition to amend the land use district boundary of certain land situated at Kapa'a, Island of Kauai, State of Hawaii, consisting of 97 acres from the agricultural district to the urban district tax map key 44-3-003, a portion of lot 1. On our agenda is to consider a petition's motion to withdraw and consider a motion to dismiss, the first of which will be depositive potentially on the second. Will the parties please identify yourselves for the record, beginning with the petitioner?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. William Ewan and Jana Ahu on behalf of petitioner HG Kauai Joint Venture, LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Ewan.
And good morning, Mr. Chair and Commission, or good afternoon, actually. Deputy County Attorney Chris Donahoe on behalf of the County of Kauai. Also present is Deputy Director of Planning Jody Higuchi Seigusa.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kato.
Deputy Attorney General Allison Kato for the Office of Planning. Also here is Rodney Funakoshi from the Office of Planning.
Intervener.
Good afternoon, Bianca Isaki. I'm joined here with Liko Kolani Martin, and I believe Lance had another engagement, so I'll be representing intervener. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me briefly update the record. On May 12th and 13th, the commission met via Zoom virtual conference technology to hear continued action on this matter. On May 27th, the commission received the petitioner's motion to withdraw the amended petition for a district boundary amendment. Also on the 27th, the commission received an email from the intervener stating they were not going to file their own motion nor a brief responsive to the commission's oral motion in light of the petitioner's motion to withdraw. On May 28th, the commission received the County of Kauai's statement of no opposition to the petitioner's motion for withdrawal. On June 1st, the commission mailed and emailed the LUC agenda to the parties in this docket and to the statewide and county mailing lists. On June 3rd, the commission received the Office of Planning statement of no objection to the petitioner's motion to withdraw. On June 4th, the commission received the intervener's statement of no position on the petitioner's motion to withdraw. There has been no additional written testimony that I have record of that's been submitted on this docket. Am I correct in that, Mr. Hakoda?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We are actually still in the evidentiary portion of this docket, considering a motion to withdraw. Therefore, I will not be considering any additional oral testimony at this time from the public. We will simply be moving on to a presentation from the petitioner, if any, on their motion to withdraw. Any further comments from the county, the Office of Planning, and the intervener, with questions from the commission. Following that, the commission may take up the petitioner's motion to withdraw. If so, the matter will be dismissed and we will not take up the commission's motion to that had been considered at the end of the last meeting. Mr. Ewan.
I believe our motion to withdraw speaks for itself. We desire to withdraw the motion, withdraw the petition to reclassify the property and reevaluate what the petitioner.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any responses or statements from the County of Kauai?
Chair, the county will stand by its submitted statement of May 28th of no opposition. Thank you.
Ms. Kato for the Office of Planning.
The Office of Planning has no objection to this motion to withdraw.
Intervener, Ms. Isaki.
Thank you. No more comments and no objection to the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, are there questions for any of the parties on this motion? Seeing none. It's time for us to enter deliberation. As we do on these dockets, I would note for the parties and the public that during the commission's deliberations, we will not entertain any additional input from the parties or the public unless those individuals or entities are specifically requested to do so by me. If called upon, I will ask any comments be limited to the question at hand. Before we entertain a motion, let me confirm with each commissioner that you have reviewed the record and are prepared to deliberate on the subject docket. Please signify with either aye or nay that you are prepared to deliberate on this matter. Commissioner Chang,
Aye.
Cabral,
Yes.
Giovanni,
Aye.
Ohigashi,
Yes.
Okuda,
Yes.
Wong,
Aye.
Axon.
Aye.
The chair is also prepared to deliberate on this matter. Commissioners, I will entertain a motion that the LUC accepts or does not accept the motion for withdrawal. The motion should state the reason for acceptance or non-acceptance and be clear as to those reasons. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we accept the petitioner's motion to withdraw.
Is there a second? Commissioner Wong?
Chair, I second.
Okay, Commissioner Giovanni, can I ask you to speak to your motion?
As stated in my remarks with the second to the motion that was made by Commissioner Okuda at the last hearing on this docket, I did not feel that the petitioner met the burden of proof to support the original intent of the intention of the petition to redistrict this area, the subject property, and therefore I think it's a wise and a considerate move, and I appreciate it very much that the petitioner is willing to withdraw his application for redistricting.
Okay, I'm going to call on each of the commissioners to offer comments, beginning now with Commissioner Wong as the seconder.
I concur with Commissioner Giovanni, Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Axon?
No further comments.
Commissioner Chang?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I would have is I appreciate the petitioner's motion and their wisdom in withdrawing in light of commissioner's comments. I would urge them to work with the community and the government agencies if they are interested in pursuing this. Thank you. I have no other comments.
Commissioner Okuda?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Commissioner Ohigashi?
Nothing to add.
Commissioner Cabral?
Thank you. I agree with the motion, and I would want to just concur with Commissioner Chang. I'm very much into housing. I make a living with housing, and I see how desperately that Kauai community needs housing. And I would really urge them to work with the community, work with the government, and perhaps additional developers of some sort in order to package this in such a way that they could do this in perhaps an incremental method or something in order to, in a proper manner, provide housing. I think no longer are everybody going to be able to rubber stamp things that might cause horrible problems for traffic and for sewer and water. Those kind of considerations have to be really seriously and completely addressed before any agency can move forward. So I appreciate their withdrawal at this time and hope they can repackage this in some manner to satisfy all the needs of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to echo my fellow commissioners' thanks to Mr. Ewan and Ms. Ahu. And I also like to thank the really thoughtful cross-examinations that were offered by Mr. Donahoe, Ms. Kato, Mr. Yee, Mr. Collins, and Ms. Isaki that I believe contributed to this point, and also thank the intervener, who of course alone, except with the commissioners, is unpaid in these matters, and but is participating for what he believes is the best for Hawaii. And I believe the action of withdrawal is done in the best interest of the island of Kauai by the petitioner. So we're very grateful. Is there anything further, commissioners? Seeing none, Mr. Ordenker, will you please poll the commission?
Mr. Chair, the motion is to accept petitioner's motion to withdraw. Commissioner Giovanni.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Axon.
Aye.
Commissioner Cabral.
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Aye.
Commissioner Higashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Okuda.
Yes.
Chair Schreier.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you to all the parties. I also neglected to thank the many public testifiers, including, I think, the first time somebody has testified while trimming a tree from the island of Kauai. The public testimony was also very helpful to this commission. With that, is there any further business, commissioners? Commissioner Chang?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ordenker, I just want to confirm in light of Mr. Tabata's clarification, is the hearing scheduled for June 22nd? Is that no longer necessary?
Yeah, actually, we do have to adopt the order for the other matter that was discussed yesterday, the other special permit.
Oh, I see. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further clarifications or questions? Seeing none, thank you to everyone, and I declare this meeting adjourned.